Looks like we are live now on YouTube. This is a sort of a sneak attack, unannounced live stream. So I don't know. I don't know how many people will find us, how quickly people will find us, but we are live now on YouTube. And hello, whoever is out there. I'm Leslie Elliott Boyce. I'm speaking with Cari Bartholomew and Christine Sefein-Wolk. And we have done a number of these. I don't know how many we've done. I haven't been counting them like I count the Solid Ground live streams. What do you think, like 20 of them?
Yeah, that sounds
Probably
about
around
right.
there.
Something in that realm. We should go back and find out at some point.
Yep.
And if you guys are interested in the archives, check them out. There's a playlist called Sanity Check for our conversations.
Yes.
And we usually talk about what's going on in the world of education, K through 12, a little bit of psychology, mental health, but a lot of what we've talked about has been K through 12, which is a real passion for Cari. And Christine, you're an educator as well, a higher education, but it's also been a big interest of yours, what's going on in the world of schooling broadly. So as we get started, giving people a moment. Hey, Kathleen, nice to see you there. Why don't you kind of lead us in, Cari? What's been going on? What are important things for people to know right now?
Sure.
Are the culture wars over, as Aaron Kinspotter asked yesterday?
That's exactly where I was going to head because I heard that yesterday. I listened, it's part of my Monday routine. And so I listened and I thought, no, I have spies. And so somebody reached out and said, look at this. And what it was last year's DEI commitment changed to student success. So all they did was change the top line. So it's no longer DEI, it's now called student success. And I actually know the legislators who brought up the idea, and I know why they brought up the idea, and I know that their intent was right. But these people are so committed to subverting. And so I thought we could maybe go through some of what that looks like, because I don't like to just talk about something if we, have evidence of what it actually is. And then yesterday, a mom reached out to me and said, look at this book. And my general thought when it comes to public libraries is we shouldn't touch them. Public library, like you can't say you can't have the Book of Satan, right? You cannot say that. So how then do we say, you need to remove X book? Parents have a right to give their kids whatever they're going to give them. However, I think that more importantly than going and saying, get this book out, is explaining how this genre of book, and there's a ton of them. This one is specifically a series, multiple series, the same thing, where it is a girl who's a Christian, or maybe a boy who's a Christian, specifically a Christian, specifically homeschooled, right? I mean, it is so down, like the agenda is right there. Specifically homeschooled Christian, has conservative parents, is in a cult. That's literally what the description says.
So these are the ones that you sent me some images of. Do you want me to put these on the screen right now?
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. So there's more than one of these books?
Full series.
So
Pray the Gay Away, or Gay the Pray Away.
Gay the Pray Away. Are you seeing the screen right now?
Yes.
Okay. So there's two girls here, and
they're throwing everything, right? Because the one girl is biracial.
Oh, yeah.
So it's everything. It's a racial conversation. It is a rural conversation. And I think that's really important because people move to places, and I live in a place like this. Like this could be the field across from my house.
Wow.
I mean, just look at the comment from the New York Times bestseller author with the comment right there, even on the page, on the flap of the book, the front.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
Two
says-
equal parts of sweetness, care, and stubborn queer perseverance.
Right.
Wow.
Right.
No,
And so
Joe
go ahead.
Cool. Read it again, Joe Cool. It doesn't say the pray the gay away. It says gay the pray away.
Yes.
Yes.
So here I'm gonna click on these. These are the synopses that you sent. Is this book or a
Yes.
different one? You want to
No,
read
it's
that out
this
loud,
book.
Cari?
Sure. Valerie Danners is in a cult. She just doesn't know it yet. When she finds a queer book at the library and smuggles it home, her conservative Christian homeschooling world begins to crack. And when the cutest girl she's ever met shows up at Bible class, she starts to question everything. Riley is so confident and kind, and she and Valerie bond quickly over existing as multiracial teens in a very white Christian community. As Valerie explores her feelings for Riley, she begins to see the world she knows is carefully crafted narrative. Publicly, the girls are close friends, holding hands in prayer, rooming together at a conference. Privately, they grasp at any chance to continue their forbidden romance until they are found out. Now, Valerie must choose between staying with a family she fears will never accept her or running away with the girl she loves.
Oh my gosh. Okay, let's see. This one is
Okay, so
is this a different one or a same book?
This is just a portion. So I shared this, and what this is it's actually Yako, and he shared just, yes, the goal is our kids. So here's the thing that's really frustrating. We are told this would never be here. You're paranoid. This will never ever come to your school. And so a lot of people go, oh, sweet, it'll never be here. You know, those schools like New York, they're insane. But Utah, it'll never happen in. Colorado, which used to be a red state, it'll never happen in, right? The reality is that this was always the goal. And so that's what this is, where he says, the goal has always been to come after our kids. And I know that sounds paranoid, but this is their writing. And so this is from Drag Pedagogy.
Okay.
And it says relations with children would include as much. Am I allowed to say this?
Sure.
Okay.
YouTube might demonetize, but I don't really care.
Relations with children would include as much genital sex as the child was capable of, probably considerably more than we now believe. But because genital sex would no longer be the central focus of the relationship, lack of orgasm would not present a serious problem.
What is this? Like, what's the beginning? It says, thus, without the incest taboo, adults might return within a few generations to a more natural polymorphous sexuality, the concentration on genital sex and orgasmic pleasure giving way to total physical/emotional relationships that included that. What? This is from what? Queer pedagogy?
Drag queen pedagogy. Yes.
And who wrote that?
Let me look it up real quick.
Is that a pro queer thing?
Yes,
or is
it
this a
is.
critique of queer stuff?
No, this is pro. But the thing is that if you go to people who are critiquing, which I actually really enjoy, like Logan Lansing's book, right? If you go to those kind of things, people will say, oh, they're just biased, which is another thing that we can talk about. But they'll say they're just biased. So you go to their direct sources and you read their direct information and you put their direct information out there. And then when people call you a bigot, which they do, you say, read the sources yourself.
And so this is the source material.
This is the source material itself.
Ageist and homosexual sex taboos would disappear, as well as non-sexual friendship, Freud's aim inhibited love. All close relationships would include the physical, our concept of exclusive physical partnerships, monogamy, disappearing from our psychic structure, as well as the construct of a lover ideal. But how long it would take for these changes to occur and in what forms they would appear remains conjecture. The specifics need not concern us here. We need only set up the preconditions for a free sexuality. Whatever forms it took would be assuredly an improvement on what we have now. natural in the truest sense. In the transitional phase, adult genital sex and the exclusiveness of couples within the household might have to be maintained in order for the unit to be able to function smoothly with a minimum of internal tension caused by sexual frictions. It is unrealistic to impose theories of what ought to be on a psyche already fundamentally organized around specific emotional needs. And this is why individual attempts to eliminate sexual possessiveness are now always inauthentic. Wow, this is crazy. It's like just a bunch of amoebas blobbing up together is what they're picturing as like the natural form. It's like, it's so weird.
So apparently this woman who wrote this, she died lonely in her apartment, miserable, in a very unhealthy place. And so what Yako said is that she's projecting her version of utopia. And if it made her so sick, what's it going to do the rest of us? Especially kids.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's the place where I'm like, probably, I don't know, not that often, but maybe like a couple of times a month, somebody says, you're a blankety blank bigot. And it's just like, I don't care what you call me. If you're going to do this to kids, throw all the names you want to, right? Because at some point, somebody has to say, you don't get to do this to our children.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we've done is we have pulled in Utah, we've said, oh, we won't do that. So right now we have a ton of elections because we have a whole new district, because we took a ton of COVID money. We took a ton of COVID money and we're building new schools everywhere. Big, beautiful new schools.
Mm-hmm.
And in these big, beautiful new schools, they need new school boards. So all of these people are running for school boards, and we've got trans activists running. We've got all sorts of people. And then we have the fake religious people who like put on their Sunday best and stand and say, I support age appropriate books for children. Okay, but you have to understand different people have different views of what's appropriate. And they believe that this is appropriate because this is inclusive. So a mom went up to the library in a small little town and said, hey, I am a homeschool mom and I don't appreciate this being in front of, you know, right there for my kids to see. And the librarian said, well, we're inclusive here. So we need to understand that that is the subversion. The subversion is, well, we're no longer going to say LGBTQIA plus two-spirit, whatever. We're not going to say that. We're going to say inclusive.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to say safe and welcoming. But it's the same exact thing. And it's at every age. Go ahead. Sorry.
This is why I am skeptical. And we talked about this very briefly. I think I brought it up on Solid Ground yesterday about this Supreme Court decision that passed that said you can opt your kids out. They're just going to find another way to rename or call it something else, but still provide that very same education in K through 12. I was very skeptical about that. And I don't know that that's going to be enforceable in the states. I mean, it's like depending on the states to enforce it in each district all over. I know California, for example, would not enforce something like that. They would probably, it would be the opposite in a place like this. So, you know, I think that's what's so upsetting is that on the one hand, it appears to be that there's steps that are happening that move us forward. But on the other hand, I feel like we're still running into that same exact wall, though. It's just painted a different color, but it's the same wall we keep hitting our heads over.
Christine,
that's what I think's very.
You're
Yeah.
coming in a little quiet for me still. I don't know if
Oh,
you
I
can,
am.
if you're
Okay.
able to turn it up just a little bit.
Yes.
Can we
yeah.
also hit
What's
on
that?
that on that particular case, something that nobody has touched, and this is gonna get it's gonna get sticky. Okay, these books are targeting Christians. You had Naomi, is it Naomi Best or Naomi? And you had okay.
Yes.
Okay, so remember when she asked for an exemption and she was denied it? What is this case called? Do you know? It's Mahmoud versus Taylor. Okay. So then the question becomes, would Christians have going against this gotten it, or did we give that? Did we win that case because it was a marginalized person or a marginalized group who went against? I think that's worth asking. Like, how bad is the target towards Christians? And I would feel this way if it was another group. To me, I'm just watching this going, wow, they are really zeroing in and saying that this particular group is not worthy of X, but this one is.
Mhm.
And I just find that extremely interesting.
Well, Olivia Maynard says you have no right to teach your kids to hate and ban anyone teaching them about love. And this is something that's interesting. It's like when I don't agree with just the opt out, because I think that it needs to be more, that we need a more full measure to prevent this kind of indoctrination. Because
Yeah.
we're not talking about something that this is permeating every aspect of the educational sphere, with the propaganda on the walls and the kids doing this arts and crafts, and the other kids being included in it and being encouraged to do it. This isn't just accept other people. This is a full-scale propaganda campaign in order to
Yes.
encourage kids to take up certain identity characteristics and certain lifestyle habits. And the histrionics of the what happened in Florida, when everybody went a little, a bunch of people went crazy and started calling it the "Don't Say Gay" bill.
Right.
We have to just ignore that kind of thing. And also, I'm sorry, Olivia, I really enjoy your participation in these chats, but what you're saying is also, it's histrionic. I mean, it's not, when you're talking about stopping sexuality propaganda to little kids, you're not talking about teaching them to hate and ban.
Right.
It's a false equivalency there. So we have to be able to filter that out, ignore that kind of language, and push forward with what we know is right.
So
Well, that's
today,
the issue with, oh, go ahead.
okay,
Cari.
so today, because yesterday I was driving down the road and I saw a sign that said, love, not hate, makes America better. And then, are we better yet? And just that if you are at a place where you think that anybody being discerning, anyone saying, you know what, teaching kids about sex, comprehensive sex in schools is a problem. And now, right now in Wales, kids are getting they're getting in trouble in school for sexual assault because they don't know. They have been taught in their classroom to take a marker and to draw where it feels good to be touched. And then they're touching each other in those places.
Oh,
Good
Jesus.
grief.
Yeah.
My
And we're
God.
talking little kids. So you saying that we're hateful because we say, hey, that's a line too far. And guess what? We're not even saying you can't do it. The people said, I don't want my kid exposed to that. Okay. And only the people who said it, all they're doing is removing their child. The books are still in the classroom. The curriculum is still in the classroom. All of this is still happening. But yet you get to say hate. And so what I would say, I'm sorry, I'm going to get spicy, but you're in a cult. You're in a cult. If you can't listen to another point of view and you immediately say that anything that comes out of the other person's mouth is pure hatred, and you can't go, I'm going to go and look at the facts. I'm going to measure your facts and my facts. And we're going to actually look at what's objectively true. Then you're in a cult. And I'm really, really sorry. And for me, I've gotten to the point where if you're in the cult, I'm just going to step right over you. And not in a mean way. I mean it candidly, but I also mean it with compassion, right? Like, one of the things about Pride Month last month, I didn't know this, but I absolutely, and I've been to Pride. I've been to Neighbors on Capitol Hill. Like, I'm not that, whatever. So, but what it used to be about was a celebration of the people who have lived on, through HIV, people who have lost their lives from HIV, and people who have been brutally assaulted. That's what it used to be about, is standing with those people. If it's still where they're at, I would still walk. It doesn't matter what I believe religiously. I would walk because I believe that human beings, that's true compassion. And that's what happens. is parents come in and they go, we just want to be compassionate. We just want to be kind. And they have no idea that the flip side is to queer as many children as possible. That is literally the flip side. That is the agenda from their own sources.
Well, the models in education are all based now and have been for a long time on queer theory, right? And that's something that's injected into every subject in its own way.
Yes.
So it's all the subject matter. That's why opting out isn't really going to do a whole lot either, because you're going to get that in math, you're going to get it in science, you're going to get it in history, you're going to get it in all of the subjects that are taught. And queer theory is all about dismantle institutions of power, right? So that's going to be the basis of and the meat and potatoes, you know, even, and this came up yesterday, even at the college level, when they're putting out new editions of books, and this is not the case for every book all the time, everywhere. However, it is the case for some of the books that I used when I was teaching. The new editions had updated, okay, diversity type language in there that sticks and that goes along with the queer theory concept. So no matter what, it's being injected, and that's happening
Yes.
at K through 12 at alarming rates, because these kids are going to be the next generation that we're responsible for as a society, right? So that's what's so maddening about it, is that
Yes.
you can opt out all you want, but it's the principles and models upon which education is built at this current moment, curriculum wise, includes all of this in all subject matter. That's really it.
Yeah, I put in the
Yep.
chat just now, or a moment ago, a link to an episode that I recorded a little while back with a parent who was concerned enough about anonymity that this parent showed up with just a blank screen, I believe. But the parent shared with me the curriculum that their children were being taught with. And
Yep.
it was called Our Whole Lives, and it's used in a lot of different schools. And you can see that it's everywhere throughout the curriculum. It's encouraging kids to break down boundaries and to develop certain feelings around sexual identities. It's social engineering. So Olivia Maynard, who's the person that I read the chat from a moment ago, says, and Olivia, I appreciate actually that you're giving this counterpoint, because it shows something really emotional in the counterpoint. You're not in the, and sometimes you do engage in good faith, but here I don't feel like you are. What you said back, I think this was when Cari was talking, you said, I'm saying that didn't happen. And you're talking about the teaching of kids, this curriculum in schools. You say pearl clutching. You say you are in the cult. You say calling people child molesters is hate. And then you said about Cari, she has no love. What was I just lost my thing. No love for others. So it's just it's really interesting. You know, it's very, very interesting, that kind of take on this. And I appreciate the counterpoint. Oh yeah. And you say just projection, just hate dog whistles. That's the thing. I mean, we're talking about children. We're talking about little kids, and we have long had a cultural understanding that you don't talk about or invite children into sexual relationships, that there's something about childhood that should remain innocent, that kids wake up to their adult sexuality sometime in adolescence, and that we should, as adults, step back and allow them to kind of enjoy a period of innocence during childhood that doesn't involve a lot of pressure from us, and that adults have outsized influence, and that we should be very, very careful about how we influence, and that there's something special about the period of childhood. So this is new, this idea that we can undermine that innocence in order to what? In order to create a next generation of people who think about sex differently than prior generations have thought about sex.
Well, I think there's more because we are hitting on queer theory, but there's also climate theory. There's also immigration theory. So there's all sorts of theories that come down to social justice, which ultimately come down to being obedient to the state. If you don't mind, Leslie, if you'll open up the Nebo school district pages, because I want to just show that this is real. That I'm not making any of this up. This is, I mean, again, those books, I did not sit there and design a book cover and put it up there.
Can you
Student
see
success.
this? Okay.
Yes. Yeah. For educational equity. So again, equity always means equal outcomes. Now, here's the point. The point is that they want to make these children, no matter what, understand why they are oppressed. Look at the book, the original book that we were reading, what it said. I'm sorry, but I find it extremely hateful to put in front of young adults. So we're talking 12 and up. So to put in front of them books that make them question their family's values. In fact, to coin a certain activist, how dare you? How dare you? I mean, how you don't get to do that to kids. And in terms of love, and you ladies know this, but I'm just going to be really honest here. I was sexually abused myself. I'm a sexual abuse survivor. And I know what it is to have something put into your head that never, ever leaves you. And no adult gets the right to do that to children. Now, let's talk about another group that I supposedly hate so much. I think it's 80% now of kids who are who transition are detransitioning. Let's talk about another group. Just the other day, I was with a bunch of ethnic minorities, and a young woman had a 9-month-old baby. And I mean, she's sitting at this, it was a freedom festival, and she's sitting there and she goes, why does everybody want to teach my baby that he's a victim? So don't tell me, I mean, you can, but it's going to go like over me because I know I don't hate. I know that I've got students in my classroom who I do not know their gender because we don't have to talk about it. But you know what? I know they did an amazing job on their final project. And that is
and
important.
there's this is, I think, interesting also, because when you have a whole group of children, you might have a positive feeling towards that group of kids, but love is experienced on the person to person level.
Yeah.
So you might love your students, but you don't love them like their mother loves them.
No.
And so why on earth should we have curriculum designers loving our children through telling us how we're supposed to teach them? Why
Right.
on earth? I mean, and this is, Olivia says, telling a kid it's okay to be gay is not child molestation. I don't think anybody's saying that it is.
I don't
No.
have
I
that
don't think that's
discussion
what we're
one way
saying
or
at all.
another.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
I think it's useful to see these counterpoints because these really
Yeah.
are rhetorically they're all rhetorical fallacies. They're all
Right.
a false reflection of what the argument actually is. They're sort of creating a straw man out of the argument that you're making and then attacking it in this really emotional way. So it oversimplifies. And I think that really is reflective of a lot of the arguments that we see against positions in support of parents' rights and getting this sexuality stuff out of schools.
Right. Can we go down into climate on this?
Yes. What do you want to click on?
The climate, we can go a checklist for inclusive school environments. Yeah, that's probably a good one.
A checklist for
I think so.
welcoming and inclusive school environment?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's a good one. Look up at the top square. The very,
Welcoming
very
schools
top.
with the flag.
With the pride flag.
And look at how old the kids are.
Very small. Those are like 7-year-olds.
Yeah. These are actually older than last year's kids. They've updated a few of the things.
I mean, I was in Paris last month for a short time, just on a trip. And one of the government buildings, the steps on the government building was all the rainbow. And the rainbow now has completely changed meaning from what it used to mean to me and to most people, 25 years, let's say 35 years ago, versus what it means today. And and this is a little bit off topic, I guess, because we're really talking about schools here, but it's filtering out and it's coming from those institutions, and it's a top-down issue. So you've got those institutions that are supposed to be all about, treating their citizens fairly and whatnot. That to me, though, isn't a representation of that. That to me is a representation of an agenda, and it's a representation of propaganda that's being filtered down, and it's at the highest levels of government. And this is not just the United States we're talking about. This is parts of Europe. Okay, so I saw with my own two eyes. And so I think that's what's so disheartening and very, dysregulating for me, I think, to see rainbows on everything. Because that's a propaganda sales pitch right there. That's not about inclusivity, and it's not even about the rainbow itself. I mean, it's sort of been hijacked to mean something different than what it originally maybe stood for.
What do you want to click on this?
That,
yeah,
but
I think you're right, Christine.
We can click on any of them. I mean, there's books. You can go and look at books. We can look at there's lessons, topics,
that one's not there.
LGBTQ.
Let's see LGBTQ.
There you go.
Gosh.
There you go.
Gosh.
There it is.
So
wow, why would this baby need to be safe and affirmed for their gayness?
Exactly.
This is a little kid. Why do we need to talk to them about sex at all?
Right. And so I just did a 2-hour interview with Jaco. Okay, so Jaco is a psychotherapist.
Are you talking about Jaco
Funsell? Yeah.
Funsell. By the way, he's also gay.
Yes.
And I think and in this thing, I literally, when I closed, out of pure appreciation for who he is, I said, I feel like you're my brother. Because we're fighting the same things, because we understand that both of our identity boxes are used towards another goal. Okay. So I don't care who you love. Let me be super clear about that. I do not care who you as an adult love or what you do in your bedroom. Like I said, I used to go to Neighbors, which is a drag bar, where all of the people would be like, I love your hair. And they would feel like that was, there you go. There's a younger picture. There you go. They're not 7.
Oh my gosh. Those are like 5-year-olds.
They are
4 and 5.
They are. So what we're doing is we're taking kids who are barely learning how to, I mean, some of these kids, I don't know if you guys are ever in school, but little first graders sometimes have accidents.
Yes.
They sometimes, they sometimes they wet themselves. It's the fact, and more, quite frankly, right? They're just learning the basics of life. They're learning that, oh my goodness, if I have an accident, somebody's like, I've had a student who's been like, I need to hide this. And then you're like, oh, you poor kid, right? I don't take the kid and think, I don't condemn them for that. As I've said before, when you have a student who wants the pretty princesses out of one pocket, who happens to be a boy, those stickers, as opposed to the dinosaur stickers, you just give them the stickers and you move on. Because you don't have to be reduced down to your gender, and it's not my business. And I found many young gay kids who are like, my teacher needing to know my sexuality is not their business, and it creeps me out.
Look at this. Sexual orientation is who you love. In grades 3 to 5, that's 8 years old through 10 years old, you might say who you love or are attracted to. So they're confusing children on the concept of love, because when you're talking, they're saying like who you love. So this is in brackets for the older children. This is what we would say. So they start talking to even kindergartners about sexual orientation. And then they use the word love to be equivalent to sex. So we can't use the word gender to be equivalent to sex anymore, because gender has to be this feeling that you have. It can't be your sex. It used to be like this euphemism that went back and forth. Your sex or your gender was the same thing, but now gender is the separate thing that's detached from your sex. But love is the same thing as sex. That's pretty messed up right
Yes.
there. That's wild.
Yes, it is.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Like when my babies love their mom, they don't think about sex. And when mom says to the baby, I love you, that's not about sex, but we're supposed to tell 4, 5, 6, 7-year-olds that love and sex are the same thing. My sexual orientation is who I love. Well, I love daddy. What does that mean? That's really creepy. This is so confusing. This is
It's
horrible.
confusing.
And you
it's
guys, it's
creepy.
happening. There,
It's happening everywhere.
I did an interview with this couple from Wells, and this little boy who was autistic went into his mom's room and climbed into bed with her. And she's like, what are you doing? And he said, I'm going to give you a baby.
Oh,
Because
Jesus.
that's their
Excuse me.
understanding of that's their understanding when it's presented to them too young. Lesson plans to create LGBTQ inclusive classrooms and schools. No.
Olivia, it says gays. Olivia says gays can't be in love. We're not talking about gays. We're talking about kids. Kids aren't gays or straights. They're kids.
I can't. Okay. Yeah. So here's the thing. The whole point is to create a revolutionary energy. The whole point is to make people constantly think, why is the world against me? And to not really, I think, the tricky word is think, because they're not thinking, they're reacting, they're emoting, they're constantly saying, if you don't support, if you don't affirm, and if you don't celebrate, then you're my problem. And that's not the way the world works for every single person. I haven't seen you guys in a month. I'm not going, oh my gosh, they don't celebrate me. They don't affirm me. Oh, my world's falling apart. Life goes on. Life goes on. You don't have to like everybody.
Well, see, that's the issue too, though, I think, is this whole idea that you have to like everybody. You have to be kind of overly compassionate and, respect.
See this right here.
Yes.
Incorporate. This is right to Christine's point.
Yes, that's what my point was, is that is across the curriculum. That's why this whole opting out doesn't work.
Yep. And remember, this is in a small town. I live in the same town that Footloose was filmed in. This is a small town. This is like small town America by definition. We have people in our school districts who are literally trans teachers, and their only job as a teacher, their only job is to make the kids comfortable with transgenderism. Like, they're not teaching classes. They're hanging out and being cool and making kids comfortable. They're queering education. And to queer education means literally to find out what's wrong and to dismantle it.
Yes, the dismantling, exactly. That's the power, the concept of the oppressed and oppressor at its very basic level. That's essentially what that is. And all of these institutions are considered patriarchal, right, and oppressive in nature. So we're dismantling them
against our own demise, right? So then we do things like we vote in a man who's been a citizen for 7 years.
Yes.
In New York, you take on somebody, and he hasn't been voted in yet, but he's in his primary. And so you take on somebody like that because you hate the patriarchy so much.
Look at this here. Some states require guardian consent when school curricula address sexuality. However, when educators discuss family diversity, they're not talking about sexuality. They're talking about understanding the importance of family, love, and acceptance for everyone. So here's that loophole around your opt-out. This is your opt-out loophole.
Yes.
But we just said that love and sex are the same thing. So, we're going to pretend we're going to play both sides of that.
Right.
This is so upsetting to me. This is so upsetting. This is why I can't put my children in school. This is why we homeschool.
Yeah,
You know,
because how can you? You can't trust what they're going to be learning. And
No.
when you have people that, I mean, even a friend of mine who was living in the South for a long time and whatnot, and I've said this story a million times. Her kid at like 5 or 6 years old was asking whether or not she was a girl or a boy. She's had to do all of this kind of rewiring at home because of what's happening at school, and try to teach what the difference is between a boy and a girl, using bugs when they go on little adventure hikes, and using other animals. I mean, she's actually doing quite a phenomenal job of sort of, without the support of the school. But
yeah.
um, it's how to, and this is the question, Cari, all of these kinds of executive orders and whatnot, there's loopholes, they don't work. Okay. So what does work? Because I feel like it's so hopeless.
Okay, it's so funny because I'm holding a meeting tonight on this very subject. And um so what I generally think is that if you are a parent who is involved, and I mean involved, you know your stuff, you know where this is coming from, and you can have those conversations with your kids, then maybe they're safe.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of people will say, especially religious people,
Mm-hmm.
I send my kids to school to be a light. Yes, but
Mm-hmm.
if you can't be a light, if you are too afraid to have the conversations, then you cannot expect that on your children. You cannot put that on your children. And it's not
Mm-hmm.
fair. If
Mm-hmm.
you don't have the courage to have the conversations, if you have the courage to have the conversations, I mean, my son is a teenager, and the conversations that I have with him, sometimes he'll go, "Oh, mom, no, that's not there." And then sometimes he'll go, "Well, mom, you don't even go far enough. You don't even understand what's here, what
Mm-hmm.
they're
Mm-hmm.
doing and what's being put in front of us." Especially, I would say more so in our schools, it has more to do with socialism. So he once texted me and said, "My goodness, mom," my teacher actually said it, "real socialism hasn't been tried yet." And he knows, but the teacher actually used those words again in a rural, supposedly very conservative state. Teachers are saying this stuff. They're
Mm-hmm.
subverting. And so I don't know. Um, I'm hoping to be able to speak the with Linda McMahon, the head of the Department of Education. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
hoping to be able to show her in great detail, this is what's happening. Your
Mm-hmm.
success centers, you can't just let them change the words. Now, another thing that I didn't send you guys, there's a group that had said, you know what, if you're going to teach Black history, this is the history that we want. And this is not bipolar, but bipartisan in its work. So it will have Dr. Bob Woodson along with Coleman Hughes, along with all of
Uh-huh.
these people who've brought a pragmatic view of teaching Black history, so that our people are not taught to constantly see themselves as victims or oppressed. And our schools said no because it's political.
Oh my
Meanwhile,
gosh.
you could do the opposite, right? Meanwhile, you can teach them 100%. People will say it. People were saying it just the other day on like threads, like, how am I supposed to teach real history without teaching that slavery existed? Guess what? Nobody's asking you to not teach that slavery existed. And coming back to this queer theory, no one is asking you, at least I'm not asking you, to not teach that there's different families, but leave it there. We don't then have to open up a book that shows cartoons of kids walking in parades and an old man reaching down and kissing a young person, or people having their stuff cut off. We don't
Well, it's too
have to have
much
that in
even.
pictures for kids.
Yeah, and they're even teaching, even what they teach about straight sex is inappropriate at the age of 5. Like, circle what parts of your body feel good to be touched. That
Yes,
doesn't matter whether it's trans, gay, straight, LGBTQ, right? It doesn't matter. That's too young for any of them. It's
right.
too young for any child. It's confusing for a child, and they don't have the emotional or the mental sophistication to understand sexual arousal, touch, what's healthy touch, what touch is inappropriate, that kind of stuff. They don't understand at that age. So you have all of these over sexualized kids by age 8, and whose fault is that, right?
Right.
That
And you know what? I think that gay families do the same thing that straight families do, in saying your body is yours.
That's right.
And nobody should touch you except, you know, if mommy or daddy are helping you at the bathroom, or if a doctor with mommy in the room or daddy in the room, then that's as far as that age needs a conversation.
Mhm.
So, and you know what's really creepy is that when they learn the terms, the people who are attracted, by the way, most of our comprehensive sex ed information is coming from John Money.
Mm.
Okay. John Money had kids, brother and sister, live as brother and sister, but they were really brother and brother, do things to themselves.
Mm.
But we adopt his ideas and go, oh, that sounds great, he's an expert.
Mm-hmm.
And so we really just need to remove sex out of schools. And if it's not a problem, then let's go back to Mahmoud versus Aubrey. They can have respect for their religion. They can say, my religion says no way. And nobody's turning around and saying you're a bigot. Right? Because this is all very selective in who is kind, who deserves tolerance, and who doesn't. So what I believe is that all of this comes down to teaching people to hate.
Mm-hmm.
For the person who wants to call me a hateful person, hate makes me a little sick to my stomach, because I've studied history enough to know where just blanket hatred goes. So they're teaching to hate. And a lot of people will say, well, we're in an anti-Semitic phase right now. I don't disagree, but we are also very much in an anti-Christian phase.
Yes.
Very
especially
much so.
Yes, very much so in the US.
And I would not, well, in all of the West, right? Because
all of the
in
West,
the UK,
yeah.
it's crazy too. But the fact that people can just, like, okay. So we have a politician here who I actually really like. And he has upset people, but that's because they twisted what he actually said. And so I've got these church women who are like, in the parade this week, make signs telling this politician how much you hate him. Okay, we're supposed to be the mental health capital. We focus, we really care, we're so compassionate. Really? So you got people walking down streets saying, I hate you, I hate you, I hate you, I hate you.
That's compassion.
What does that do for just a regular human, for anybody? For anybody.
It's like 1984. It's the 2 minutes hate.
Yeah. So, and I saw this person who had posted this, and I said, wow, I would never have expected this to come from you. Because you guys are saying, and this is biblical, where it says, evil shall be called good and good become evil. And that's really where we're at. I honestly don't hate anyone, but I'm not going to put hate signs on the back of my car and say, you should be ashamed of your hate. No, sorry. I don't hate because I disagree with you. That's not enough of a reason to say that I hate you. Your child would be just as welcome in my class as anybody else. Period. I don't need to know. And no, I do not love your kids the way you love your kids. I understand that. When they leave my classroom, I'm focused on the next group of kids. But when they're in my classroom, I want to fill their heads with goodness and hope. And yep, we talk about hard things, but I want them to think to themselves, I can be my own hero.
Mm-hmm.
Not, I'm hindered because
Mm-hmm.
I'm Black. I'm hindered because I'm an immigrant. I'm hindered because I'm gay. No, you're not. No, you're not. And all this crap that they're willing to sell our children for. That's what I see, is they're willing to sell our children. It all comes down to teaching our kids to be obedient to what they decide, what they describe as is kind or is respectful, right? Because religions are only respectful if you completely embrace somebody else's whatever.
Yeah. I want to read a couple chats. Seaglow says, I homeschooled my 4 children starting in 1996 when I learned my small Massachusetts public schools were teaching 5th graders to put condoms on bananas. David Lowboy says, so the school system, which I am forced to pay for ultimately at gunpoint, is somehow apolitical. Through the portal says teachers should not be talking about any of that. Weirdos. Spinster Mountain says, right, no sex is appropriate for children. I can't believe we even need to have this conversation. I worry it's a distraction for something even more evil.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
is.
You know, that
Yeah.
I think that, and I put on the screen for a minute there as we were talking, a study from, I think 2020, or a report on a study from 2020 about how education is being used in order to reduce population growth.
Mm-hmm.
Education, this has been something that they've talked about for at least 20 years. I remember going to a lecture when I was in undergrad, probably around 2005 to 2008, somewhere in there. And they were talking about population control and how we had this population problem and what were we going to do about it. And one of the things that the author was citing was success in reducing population by educating women. When you educate women, and the way that they kind of pass this off is like, this is this great thing. You're lifting women up out of poverty, but actually it was right there in what he said. You delay their childbearing years because you keep them busy during the years that you tell them that they need to extend this formal education well into their 20s. And then they're less likely to be having children in their 20s, which means that their fertility is declining by the time they're having children. And the most children they can have is a lower number. So you also convince women that they need jobs, that their identity is defined by their career outside of the home. And then they're more likely to spend their life working towards that and working towards building an identity outside of the home. And they're not as likely to be persuaded that what they should be doing is bearing children and getting married. So you first educate women. You basically propagandize women. You propagandize generations of girls to think that being a mother is something unimportant, and here's what you really ought to be doing. And then, this is just an extension of that. First you do it to women, and then you do it to everybody. Do it to little girls and little boys, and you tell everybody that there's more important things that you should do and be than growing up and raising children of your own and providing for a family. You just teach kids that there are more important things. And what's more important, it's like it was just this past week, or there were a couple of clips that were floating around of Michelle Obama saying that reproducing offspring is the least important thing that a female reproductive system does. So having babies is the least important thing, not that you do, but that your reproductive system is capable of doing. So
That's why I'm not a feminist. That's exactly why I'm no longer a feminist. I traded that hat in for some reality and sanity, because I know so many women that fit that exact same mold, didn't wait till later, have all sorts of fertility challenges and things going on, and then have big identity crises in the midst of that they should be working out of the home and they should be doing X, Y, and Z. And it's the should, and should not. And ultimately it's damaging the structure of the family unit altogether. It's actually delaying and or cutting off at the knees our ability to have families in the traditional sense or in the non-traditional sense, because this could happen among a gay couple too. This isn't just a straight women issue.
mm-hmm.
Yeah. And in the meantime, we bring over and this is again something that I'm learning about by actually talking to people of that kind of identity block. Okay. So there's a whole lot of Islam that are coming over who believe, or Muslims who do believe in large families. And it's interesting to watch because I find these people to be extremely lovely human beings. But I also am like, how does that mix when we bring in all this woke ideology? The two things don't mix. And so when you're trying to say that these two groups are supposed to be respectful of each other, how does that happen? And it hasn't happened, except for, like, again, that Mamdani guy, right? So, but I think he's performative. So I think that one wins over the other. One of the things that our children are constantly told is that we're a democracy. We're a democracy. We're a democracy. Okay. Well, a democracy is two wolves deciding to eat a lamb for dinner, right? And the lamb has no voice because it's mob rule. But what happens when the lamb's gone? When the lamb's been eaten, you turn on each other. It's extremely unhealthy. It's extremely unhealthy. It is all I do when I look at education, public education, which is really just a wing of the Democrat Party at this point. And all I see are people who hate our values. They hate Western civilization.
Yes.
And that makes me sad because Western civilization is the most gracious civilization. In terms of, we literally believe in redemption. That's our story. And so to take that away and to say there is no hope, all these people are horrible, you should feel miserable, well, you are going to create the mental health crisis that you are then going to come in and fix with all of the stuff you guys cover.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very true.
Well, this is just it's so disheartening, really. I don't know. I mean, Cari, I don't know if you have any kind of suggestions for what
Yep.
people can do. So maybe
Yeah.
give us some hope.
Sure. Okay. Well, so tonight my group is called There's No Place Like Home. And that's the thing, is that we get to create our culture, even if we don't think we have one. If we don't think we have one, then we get to go all the way back and we get to say, what are the best things? What have I looked around in life and seen and gone, I really want that for my family. I really want that for my family. And we get to start today on that. So we're at we're on the 1st. We're 1st of July, right? So we're at Freedom Month. We're at Freedom Month. One of the things that we can do is we can dig deep and find the stories that, like, for young people, young families, we can find the stories of people who are inspiring. Like, I'm covering a Molly Pitcher. Have you heard her story? Short version, Molly Pitcher. She follows her husband into the Civil War. No, the American Revolutionary War. Sorry, American Revolutionary War. And she carries her pitcher and she, gives the parched soldiers their food. And then one day her husband gets struck. They shoot they shoot a cannon. It goes under her. It splits her skirts. She keeps on working. So a woman in the Revolutionary War gets up and keeps on working because she loves this country and she believes in its promise. Those are stories, little tiny stories that you can tell your family that counter that narrative. And that's really the big thing. How do we counter the narrative? They're going to tell you something poisonous. They're going to say, oh, well, immigration in America is horrible. Well, then tell them about immigration laws in Mexico. Or show your kids, pull up the videos of the kids coming over here on, not the kids, the immigrants coming over here in inner tubes as rafts, right? Like the tires as rafts. Show them what people will risk to come to this country. This is how we start to build hope. When we start to talk about mental health, well, sorry, ladies, do not put your kids in professional mental health services unless you have vetted so much. But if you haven't vetted, my God, get your kids and go camping. Literally bring them home.
Yeah.
If you want to save our country, bring them home, regain your power. You have been lied to. You have been lied to if you're gay, you've been lied to about race, and you have definitely been lied to about motherhood. Our role is sacred.
Stop
And if you
counting on
aren't
the
a mama,
schools to teach your
and if
kids.
you aren't a mama, then you circle yourself around where you can help influence the next generation, however you can do that. When I'm not on a podcast, I'm not, when I'm not on a podcast and I'm not talking to senators or legislators or whatever else, I'm teaching kids. That's like, what can you do constantly? Because we are in a battle, and not everybody can, feels comfortable being in front of a screen, but we are in a battle. It's for their little souls. And that does not mean I'm saying, make them all Christian. Like, I believe that we make our choices, but I'm saying, do not teach them to hate. And we get to do that. We have one. The other thing is, I'm sorry, I know this is getting long. The other thing is that we know what's been taught. We know what's been presented. We've seen this material in front of us. We know it's here. Stop denying that it's here, right?
Mm-hmm.
You got to face it. You just got to look at it and say, holy crap, that's heavy. What can I do about it? And I honestly think that that's where we get our sanity back.
And don't expect the schools to raise your children. You still are raising them. And so many times I feel like people are putting the lives at the hands of their teachers and their schools. And really, at the end of the day, as parents, you're the ultimate authority figure, and relying on the schools to parent your kids or to teach them right from wrong is not the be all end all direction in which to go, especially when you don't know what it is they're looking at from day to day. I mean, a lot of this is hidden from parents, wouldn't you say, Cari?
No, I wouldn't. I would say it's right in front of your face if you're willing to look.
If you're willing to look at it, but it's not spelled out so clearly.
No, in fact, it's lied about.
Yes,
you sit next to somebody in church and they say, oh my goodness, I don't know what they're talking about. They're just crazy. Just ignore them.
Mm-hmm.
But that's because they're already part of the cult.
Yes.
They honestly believe
Desperately need to strip schools back down, or not, I don't know, back down. Maybe there's never been a time that's so idyllic as schools were really not propaganda centers. I mean, that's kind of what they were created for. The whole Prussian education system is meant to churn out compliant workers. You're putting your children in a program, if you put them in public school, that's designed not to help them to self-actualize, not sexualize. I guess now it is sexualized, but self-actualize. This is not designed to help a child learn his or her talents and acquire skills that are unique to him or her. It's designed in its entirety to develop a compliant workforce. That's all it is. But now we've added this other level that is just egregious, like this level of morality education that is political brainwashing. We've added this and we've added it. We've gone so far with it in the past decade or so that parents from 30 years ago would be aghast at what children are being taught in schools right now. They've really crossed a line. Homeschooling is exploding as more and more people pull their kids out of schools. And that's really what we need to do, is keep pulling the schools out until they implode. I mean, maybe that sounds really harsh, but I believe that. I remember when Deb Philman, she was talking about public school abolition. And I thought, that sounds a little intense, but I think I'm on board with that now at this point. I'd like to see the entire project just demolished. If there's ways that communities want to pool, parents want to pool and hire tutors to help educate their children in some basic literacy, math, etc. If you want to do that because you don't feel like you're equipped to do it, then by all means. But this should not be a state funded and state a compulsory project for our children.
Nope, not at this point, when it is so subversive that I think that all of these good people in DC still don't get it. They still don't get it because they'll call a state and they'll say, "Are you following the rules?" "Yep, we changed everything." And it's like, but they didn't.
Well, yeah, it's really just way out of line what's going on. We should not be funding this. This should not be something that American taxpayers are paying for. This is destruction. And when you said teach your kids not to hate, I I don't know how I feel about that. I have to think about that. But don't teach your kids to hate. You know, I mean, this is what
Yeah,
this is
right.
a lot of the critical theory is to develop a critical consciousness, which is to look for the ways to be resentful. It's
Yes.
how should I be resentful, or how could somebody be resentful, and how can I take up resentment on their behalf? It's all
Yes.
about hate. So it's hate education, really. It's that's all it is. Critical theory is hate education.
Yes.
So we're not talking about, how to accept that people are different and be polite about it. We're talking
Mm-mm.
about how can you, like, you just looking through those resources on the, was it Nebo site and
Right.
I'll put the link in the description after we finish this. It's in the chat. I put it in there earlier. They're all about, there's so much attention to how can you combat the LGBT discrimination? How can you combat this? How can you combat that? How can you be really sensitive to hearing people hate this stuff so that you can hate them even harder? And so, they're spinning like parents who are resistant to our education as haters that you're supposed to treat as bigots, and you're supposed to make sure that they know that their bigotry is unwelcome here. So it's sort of like this totalizing ideology that contains within itself the defenses to it. So it's all just complete rhetorical fallacy from beginning to end. And
And you're going to make people hate each other more.
on
People
purpose.
who've never hated.
That's what it's for.
Like what do you think happens when somebody like me hears regularly, "You're hateful, you're hateful, you're hateful." At some point you just go, "Oh my gosh, shut up."
And can I just say too, this is what also bothers me, is that you're not teaching your kids to have a backbone either. Okay,
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
you're everything is offensive and everything's a microaggression and everything's this and that, and we need to just coddle you and coddle you. That's not the real world. However, it's become, unfortunately, what our society is now. I've been to several comic shows, stand-up comedians in the past year who have all had disclaimers about being offensive during their shows. Comedy is an art. I appreciate it. I love it. I love watching it. It's a way to connect with other people. And you've seen how that's been dismantled itself to where people can't even make a joke about something that could mildly be offensive. They've got to have a whole caveat before that to calm everybody down and make sure nobody leaves there offended and upset and hurt. And that's also not very valuable to be teaching kids to be that fragile. It's a
Right.
huge problem. And we don't need any more fragility than what we've got already now.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
you got to learn to just not give a damn sometimes rather than make a huge, big deal over every cup. We protect. No.
Jennifer Atkins said that too in the chat. She says, "Cari, you mentioned somewhere how ESL sounds like resilience training, awareness of things like cluster B, but it's the opposite, training to be
SEL.
cluster B and lack resilience."
Exactly.
Oh,
Bingo.
So
Bingo.
you guys, a friend is watching and she just sent me this stuff from Nebo, and another word that you want to hit is well-being.
Yes.
So well-being means behaving the way they want you to. So it includes social and emotional learning, restorative practices, and there's a whole parents guide. So they're coming, like I said, we have to counter that culture, right? Because they're coming after parents and they're saying, "We're going to teach you the correct way to be a parent." No, you inherently know. You inherently know what your children need. Now, you have been taught, most moms have been taught, that your children are a burden. So fix that,
Yeah.
but do not fix it by the same people who created this broken monstrosity. Do not let them fix it. But we have absolutely been told our children are a burden, and can we just get them back in schools and, you know, whatever else. And it's like, and then you get them back in schools. Think about this. They did this to them. And then they were just like, put them back. All I just need my freedom. Get them back in schools. And we didn't care what they taught them after that, because at least they were out of our hair.
Mm.
Sorry. I know it got spicy, but
Oh, you hit the nail on the head, I think.
yeah.
Well, homeschool your kids, everybody.
Yes, exactly.
Motherhood is important. It's
It
the
is.
most important thing you can do, is to be involved in the raising of the next generation. So whether you're a mother or an aunt, a father or an uncle, a grandparent, whatever it is, that's really the most important thing we do.
Sure.
It is.
Yeah. Yep. All right, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sobering sanity check today. What's one thing tell me, each of you, if you can, what's one thing that's happy in your life or that you're looking forward to?
Well, you go
Okay.
ahead first, Cari. I'll go second.
Okay. Okay. I started a Substack, so I guess I'm happy about that. But then also this week I'll be playing Elizabeth Freeman and telling this amazing story about that nobody knows. So I encourage you to go look up Elizabeth Freeman.
Awesome. Cool. If you have any links, you can send them to me. I'll put them in the description.
Okay.
Okay.
Cool.
Christine?
Well, personally, I'm learning to play golf, and that's been a challenging and very difficult game to pick up on. But I am, excited about that. Part of my whole, needing to be kind of well-rounded, this work can be consuming, and sometimes I'm in it so much so up to my, eyeballs, and I need to be focusing on other parts for my own well-being, we'll say. So I took up a hobby, and that's been keeping me busy. And
That's so cool.
it's
You
been a
like
lot
it?
of fun. I love it. It's been a lot of fun. It's very
Does your
difficult,
husband
but
play?
he's an excellent player. So plays almost every weekend. So, I figure if you can't beat him, join him. So he's thrilled that I'm learning. We play together a lot now. So
Oh,
that's
that's
been
wonderful.
fun. Thank you. Yeah. And what about yourself, Leslie?
Gosh, I just moved. So I moved to Spokane last week, and it's something I've thought about for a long time. We've lived in Western Washington I've lived there since 2009, and have been visiting Spokane a couple times a year because I have family over here. And I just finally made the decision to move over here. So we're setting up our home, still have a bunch of boxes to unpack, getting to know our neighborhood, going for these wonderful long walks and drives. And there's a lot to learn. It's a lot to discover about a new place. So
Exciting.
yeah, that's what's good.
Are
Spinster
you by your
Mountain
baby?
says,
Sorry,
what's that?
are you by your grandbaby?
Yeah. We are by the grandbaby. Yeah.
Ah.
So we've been having family dinners, which is nice. We've already had two just in the time we've lived here, where we've had
Nice.
my daughter and her family and my brother, and I have a lot of friends out here, so it's been great.
Great.
Awesome.
Yeah. Oh, Jennifer Atkins says she's a few hours from San Antonio. That's awesome. It's hot.
Mhm.
Hot, hot. Spinster Mountain says nice, closer to Idaho where normal people live. Yeah.
Yes.
And also says that she is learning to sail, which sounds
Ooh, that
awesome.
sounds so fun. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. You
Awesome.
and Christine can go on with your posh
Right.
hobbies.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Awesome. Well, I hope everybody has a wonderful week, and it was lovely to have this chat with everybody in the chat, and so nice to see you two, as
You
always. I
too.
really enjoy this.
Yes.
You
It's always a
too.
pleasure, both of
All
you.
You
right.
Yes.
too.